Lois Franco from Florida. And I am, come on, ladies.
We need some women on this side.
Oh, they want some women on this
It's like
side.
gender division over here. Thank you.
Hey, listen, who said we can't get along? This is,
Jerry, come on this side, so we got some men on this side. we might have a little gender balance, too.
you know what, this is a great day for democracy. Because we have a bipartisan, bicameral bill that is going to literally save lives, make our workplaces really clean up the toxic atmosphere in many, many workplaces. So I'm going to start with, I'm thanking all these people up here who you're going to hear from. So I won't, but I want to do a special shout out first to my sister Sherry Bustos, who with her forced arbitration bill really got things started, and the Judiciary Committee folks here, you're going to hear from Jerry and Pramila and David. And how about, get over here, Ken Buck, our Republican sponsor in the House. Phenomenal job. Thank you so much. And the real shout out goes to Gretchen Carlson and Julie Rudinsky, who against all odds fought against, and I'll get to Indira.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Who fought against powerful men and powerful corporations and have listed the voices of women because they heard the stories, not just the stories of women who were being harassed and assaulted by the movie producers and the TV producers, but the hotel maids who've been raped by the guests, by the waitresses who get pinched to get their tips, and I could go on and on. But thank you so much. But today, we did something great, right? Yep. We declared null and void and unenforceable non-disclosure agreements that are forced into employment and consumer contracts that silence survivors of sexual assault. And 1/3 of our workplace is now subjected to that. Here's an example. You show them the example, Pramila, right behind you.
That's an NDA.
You know, when you're done, just come and look at it. To me, I look at it, it says a bunch of gobbledygook. Read it. Where does it say in that contract that if I'm raped by my boss, I can't tell anyone? Because that's what it means. And it's hidden. So it's not bad enough today that a survivor is humiliated, emotionally scarred, or hurt, or they have to quit. But because they signed one of those NDAs, they have to suffer in silence, or they will be punished. So today we hold the abusers accountable, and we change the culture of the workplace. And because here's what's been happening, folks. Businesses want to protect their reputation. How do they protect their reputation? Instead of cleaning up the workplace, instead of having ethical, humane policies, they have these NDAs. So they hide their dirty little secrets. Well, no, we're not hiding them anymore. And now the incentive will be for employers to do the right thing. You want to protect your reputation, you need to protect your workers. And with that, I'm going to bring up one of our great Senate sponsors, Senator Gillibrand from New York.
Thank you very much.
New York, where I grew up.
Thank you, Congresswoman. It's an honor to be here, and I'm grateful to every advocate that I'm standing with here. These members of Congress and these advocates have been at the forefront of this issue for a long time. I really want to recognize Gretchen Carlson for personally asking me to lead this in the Senate. And working together with both Marsha Blackburn and Senator Graham, we made a difference. And we were able to join these amazing House colleagues in getting this past the finish line. This is a momentous day. Without this change, if you were sexually harassed or sexually assaulted in the workplace, you couldn't name your perpetrator. You couldn't tell the world what happened. You couldn't tell your colleagues to be careful, watch out. You couldn't do anything to protect yourself. And now, this change in the law will mean that the 5 million sexual assault survivors every year will have that right to be able to go and name their predator out in a court of law, to do so publicly and to hold them accountable. This change took a lot of work, but more than anything, it was a lot of horrible, horrible life events that women and men had to overcome to speak out and fight back. And there's no better advocate among them than Gretchen. What you experienced and what you persevered through and what you overcame is a testament to what it means to have absolute grit and determination to right the wrongs of the past and to lift up the voiceless, to make sure people could be heard. And you have protected millions of men and women with your voice alone, coming forward, making this happen, and not giving up. I want to thank Congresswoman Frankel for her effort. I want to thank Congressman Bustos and the rest of the members and my chairman here for what they've done in the House to marshal this today. It really does matter, and I think this is just the beginning of how we can keep workplaces safer and fairer and better for workers. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Kirsten, you're up. You don't know this. Okay.
David might.
I might.
Sorry, David.
I prosecuted for 25 years, and I never saw a Democrat or...
Introduce yourself.
I'm Ken Buck. I'm her friend. I prosecuted for 25 years, and I never saw a Republican or Democrat rape. All I saw was a rape victim. All I saw was a woman who was asking for justice, who was asking for help to have a voice. And that's why I came to this bill in the last bill, the arbitration bill, because we have an issue in corporate America, and we need to solve that issue. And we need to solve it to make America a stronger place. We have a lot of competitors in the world economy, and we will be stronger as a result of making sure that people go to work not scared, not worried, not concerned about what's this person going to say to me, or how are they going to corner me by the water cooler. Are there water coolers still? There are, okay.
There are water.
But by making sure that we have a safe and as productive as possible workplace. The Democrats in the House could have passed this bill by themselves. There was no need to have a Republican vote, other than the fact that Republicans stand shoulder to shoulder with Democrats when it comes to making sure we protect people in the workplace. And I am very proud of my Republican co-sponsors, because it's not easy. We have organizations that lobbied strongly against this bill as if it was the end of the world to pass a bill that protects women and people in the workplace. And so I give a lot of credit to my freshman colleague, Burgess Owens, for stepping up on something like this. You know, committee assignments, other decisions will be made in the next few weeks. A lot of good Republicans said, to heck with it. We're going to do the right thing, and we'll let the chips fall where they may. That's a huge statement. Last thing I want to mention, I said on the floor, and I will say it again, most Republicans have mothers. We have wives. I said most. I didn't want you to get mad at me and say I was being partisan here. Wives and daughters, and I am blessed to have the two most beautiful granddaughters in the world. And so this is a piece of legislation we can go home, not just home district, but home to, and be awful proud of what we did. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're going to have Chairman Nadler. Want to come up?
You skipped David. It's this lady.
Oh, he's going to go next.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I'm Jerry Nadler, Chairman of the Judiciary Committee. Today, the House continued its important work defending the right of survivors of sexual misconduct to tell their stories on their terms. This legislation is long overdue, and I'm proud to join my colleagues in passing the Speak Out Act. Exactly 1 year ago today, the Judiciary Committee's Antitrust Subcommittee held a powerful hearing where 4 survivors of sexual assault and sexual harassment came forward to testify about their harrowing experiences and the deep wounds they continue to carry with them to this day. It was a hearing none of us who were there that day will ever forget. These survivors explained how their employers attempted to silence them through provisions slipped into their employment contracts, forcing them into arbitration and prohibiting them from publicly disclosing anything about what happened. Their moving testimony demonstrated how these provisions can perpetuate sexual misconduct in the workplace. I appreciate these brave women coming forward and sharing their stories. I want to thank Gretchen Carlson for all her efforts to shine a light on this issue, as well as for the compelling testimony she has offered in the Judiciary Committee. Earlier this year, on a bipartisan basis, Congress came together to enact the Ending Forced Arbitration of Sexual Assault and Sexual Harassment Act, led by Cheri Bustos, which empowers survivors to decide whether they resolve their disputes in court or through arbitration. Today, by passing the Speak Out Act, we have worked together on a bipartisan basis once again, this time to end the oppressive culture of silence, hiding sexual misconduct, promote transparency and accountability, and make the workplace safer for everyone. I would like to thank Representatives Frankel, Buck, Cicilline, Jayapal, Griffith, Bustos, and Owens for their leadership on this bill. I would like to thank Senators Gillibrand, Grassley, Blackburn, Hirono, and Graham for their work passing the bill in the Senate. This is a proud day for Congress, and I look forward to seeing President Biden sign this important bill into law.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jerry. All right. We're going to bring up the masterful judiciary member who got this through its committee, David Cicilline.
I'll stand on these anyway.
You're going to stand on
Yeah, I like them. Yeah, I'm not proud. Yeah, look. I feel tall. Good afternoon. I am really delighted to be here with all these great champions to acknowledge the passage of the Speak Out Act. I want to begin by thanking Gretchen and Julie and Indira for extraordinary work and just the most compelling and powerful testimony maybe ever presented to the Judiciary Committee that really made a difference in this work. This is obviously really important. This is a pervasive problem in this country, and the combination of forced arbitration and non-disclosure agreements allow predators to get away with continuing their activities without any accountability. That ends today. We pass this bill. We'll go to the President's desk. I'm proud of everyone who's been a part of this. Lois Frankel for her leadership, Cheri Bustos, Pramila for our great chairman for making sure it was brought to our committee, to my Republican friends, Ken Buck, who's been such a champion on this, Curtis Owens, and others, to our Senate colleagues, Burgess, what did I say? Burgess, sorry. But it's an example of us working together to address a very serious problem in this country with a very common sense solution. And I just want to say, I said it when we passed Sherry's bill, I'll say it now with Lois's bill. This bill will literally positively impact the lives of millions of people in this country, mostly women, but men and women, millions of people who have been suffering as survivors of sexual assault and sexual violence, who were silenced, now can speak their truth and share information about what has happened to them. I want to end by saying thank you to the extraordinary staff of all of our offices, particularly Becca in Congresswoman Frankel's office, Zach in Congressman Buck's office, and Slade Bond in my office for their extraordinary work. So,
Just introduce yourself.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm going to pass on the steps.
You don't need the steps?
Don't need the steps.
Definitely don't need it.
Let me just start off by thanking two very strong advocates, Gretchen and Ken Buck, courageous, truly passionate, and allowed me to understand a little bit of what we're trying to get done. And of course, I'm blessed. I have five girls, 11 granddaughters, and I stand here for them and so many other Americans that no matter where they live, they deserve a safe place. They don't deserve to be trapped by an NDA that silences victims of workplace assault, harassment, empowers predators, and shields egregious misconduct. The Speak Out Act restores the right of survivors to pursue justice. It allows survivors to tell their stories and their voices to be heard. I'm so proud to support this bill, and thank you to my colleagues, all of you, that have stood here and supported this process, and look forward to getting to the President's desk to be signed. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Okay. All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Cheri Bustos. And let me first, I got a few thank yous also. Lois Frankel led this thing from day one. And Lois, you're the one that are kind of, you're putting all this together. But Lois, you are the one who's been a champion of this from day one. And I want to thank you for your leadership and your perseverance. I also want to do a shout out to the American Association of Justice, who's been instrumental in making sure that we understood just how harmful this has been for so long to so many women, and helping make sure that we could tell those stories in a way that is changing history. This is changing history today. I want to share a little bit of behind-the-scenes things that I think are really important. On the bill that I was most closely involved with, the Ending Forced Arbitration Against Sexual Harassment and Sexual Assault, we passed that, and it was signed into law by President Biden in March of this year. Most of us were there for that signing. We got 113 Republicans and every Democrat to vote for that in the House. And so the moment that that happened, Ken Buck left, but the moment that that happened, it was the realization that we cannot stop just with making sure that people would have a right to go to court as opposed to just an arbitrator in cases of sexual harassment and sexual assault. We realized we had to go the next step, and it was at that moment, seeing that we got 113 Republicans supporting this, that I think I got on the phone immediately to Lois Frankel and said, Lois, we got to move on your non-disclosure agreements and making sure those are also null and void. So that happened, and then here we are today in the lame duck session. Today we got 100 Republicans to vote with every single Democrat in the House. So this truly is, it's not one of those things, you know, sometimes we'll get like 1 or 2 Republicans and we'll call something bipartisan. This is not one of those examples. This is not one of those examples. And then out of the Senate, just for a little bit of the backstory there, we got this out, it was hotlined in the Senate. So every single senator supported this. I want to thank my good friend, Senator Dick Durbin, who leads the judiciary in the Senate. And I couldn't be prouder of being from the same state as Senator Durbin, but he helped lead this through over there, and I want to make sure that we did a shout out to him as well. But, and then lastly, together, this is a 1-2 punch, right? Ending forced arbitration, getting now rid of the non-disclosure agreements. Together, this is called the most important labor legislation this century. All right, so think about that. This is something that will make a tremendous difference to people in the workforce. The most significant labor legislation this century. So, Lois, I want to thank you for your leadership in this. And again, to our survivors and to our advocates, you are the ones who made the difference. David Cicilline said that the testimony in the judiciary that day was one of the most moving bits of testimony that you have ever heard. And but you made a difference by sharing your story. So thank you for doing it. Thank you for your bravery. And with that, I want to turn it over to Pramila Jayapal, who has also been very helpful and instrumental in making sure that we could pass this legislation. Pramila.
Well, thank you so much, and you see why we're going to miss Sherry Bustos so much in the House of Representatives. She has just been such an incredible champion, first on the Ending Forced Arbitration Act, which I was so proud to co-lead with you. Lois Frankel, thank you so much for your work on this, and to everybody, and I just want to echo a couple of points. One in 3 employees is covered by these NDAs. So this is an enormous population of people. And when you read this, Lois, I was reading it as you instructed me to do, it is so broad and vague, and it includes, you would have no idea that if you were raped or you were sexually harassed, that somehow that would be covered under this. And so, and even if you were, what are you supposed to do? Not take the job and not have your economic security and your future assured because of this NDA? And so this is a really big deal. When Sherry says that this is the biggest pro-labor piece of legislation, it really is an enormous, enormous accomplishment for the rights of workers, and particularly those who are most economically challenged because they have the least amount of power. Second, the testimony that we heard and the advocates and the work that you all have done, and Gretchen, you have just been a complete, not just a champion, but a strategist, a partner on how to get this done, how to do it in a bipartisan way. The one that still sticks in my mind is the story of Tatiana Spottiswoode, who came under a friendly subpoena to be able to tell her story. And she talked about her boss, Zia Chisti. And she talked about the incredible abuse that she faced from him and the fact that she wasn't able to talk about it until she came to the Judiciary Committee. Not only did she have us in tears of rage, and it was rage, and sorrow, both, but her being able to bring sunlight to that story, to her story and what happened, was really then led to accountability. Zia Chisti had to resign. very high-profile people on the board had to step down from the board of the organization, and people across the country in this situation, like Tatiana, felt for the first time like they were not alone, that they were not crazy, that this was not something that was their fault, that they were actually getting, that they were getting justice for themselves and for their voices. And so that is really critical. And then the third thing to say is just that there are things we can do in a real bipartisan way, and seeing the big bipartisan vote on the floor today was really good. If Ken and Burgess were here, I would want them to know that regardless of what the groups on the ground say, regardless of the pressures that we sometimes get to be very partisan, it does take courage to step out. And so I really appreciate my Republican colleagues who voted for what is right, voted for their grandkids, for their granddaughters, their wives. Everybody has a mother, I think, but unless there's immaculate conception or something that we don't. But it is really, really, I think, a testament to what we can do. So thank you all so much. Thank you so much to the advocates for, I wish we didn't have to share stories, but they are the thing that make a difference and make policy, not just about legislation and words on a page, but about human lives. So very grateful to be a part of this and very excited to see this bill signed into law. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Now we're going to bring up the real champions. I got three women I'm going to ask: Gretchen Carlson, Julie Roginski, and Dira Hennard. They've been out there in the field lifting women, and thank you so much. Let's start with Gretchen.
Well, thank you to every member of Congress through their hard work, and I also want to say thank you to all their staffers because it would never happen without the hard work that they have been doing 24/7. I never thought I was going to know what the definition of a hotline was. I never envisioned that I was going to be doing this advocacy work over the last 6 years, or that I would be strategizing at all about how to introduce bills, or for that matter, try and get them passed, which we all know is much more difficult. But here we are today, and I will forever be grateful to these members of Congress standing alongside of us here and the other advocates, because we walked the walk and we talked the talk, and we got it done. When I finally found the courage to sue Roger Ailes at Fox News, it was a really dark day when my team of lawyers said to me, "You have no case, actually." And I said, "Well, what are you talking about?" They said, "Because of the silencing mechanisms that you had in a contract that looked," well, I'm not supposed to say this, but hypothetically looked like something like this. I had no understanding as a highly educated woman that in planning to bring forth a lawsuit that I was going to be forced into the secret chamber of arbitration, and also that I had signed an NDA that precluded me from talking about any of it. So I had signed that contract, and I'm not alone. Millions of other Americans have signed similar contracts. So unbelievably, on that day, the choice for me had already been made. And that's what's so crazy about these NDAs and forced arbitration is you're signing on the dotted line before anything has actually ever happened to you yet. I mean, how crazy is that we think that that is okay in the American system? So we're here today as advocates to change that. We've talked about how we passed the arbitration bill into law. It was signed with the president on March 3rd. Today we're grateful to be back so swiftly in a span of 8 months to do both of these bills and sign them into law. Hopefully the president will do that soon. And we all know when survivors can speak their own truths and they can talk about their own experiences with other colleagues, when witnesses, this bill also includes witnesses not being subject to NDAs, very important in the process of changing the system. That's how we finally make people accountable for their bad actions. The only way to end the vicious cycle of abuse is to end the vicious cycle of silence. 6 years ago when I jumped off the cliff, no one gave me a chance in hell of being successful. Not many believed my actions would ever bring down Roger Ailes or help to ignite an international movement. And for sure, no one thought we'd end up passing bipartisan legislation, not once, but twice. And all I can say is, what's next? Yes. Because at our nonprofit, Lift Our Voices, we're far from being done for all the other people who are disenfranchised and still do not have justice. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Julie Roginski, my colleague.
Thank you. Our flight was so delayed that I actually had to bring my phone to do the speech because I couldn't print it out, so I apologize. To all the members here, you are all champions. To my congressman from the Upper West Side, Chairman Nadler, you and I sometimes run into each other at the Utopia coffee shop in Amsterdam. Thank you for all your work that you've done on this issue, Congresswoman Frankel, and certainly to all the staff, Becca, Slade, I think Zach has left, but you guys are champions. As a former staffer, I know who does all the real work, and so I appreciate it. Look, this today really showed that we can get things done in a very bipartisan way in Congress. To anybody who thinks our system is broken, this is evidence that it's not. And I'm so happy to be able to say that. This is the second significant piece of Me Too legislation that Congress passed in the last 9 months, in large part because my colleague Gretchen Carlson is relentless. You do not want this woman on your case because she will never stop. And it also shows that our movement is only getting stronger. The Speak Out Act is the result of years of hard work by women who refused to be silent even when they were legally bound by silencing mechanisms. For me personally, it's the culmination of one of the most difficult moments of my life, that day 4 years ago when a young woman named Katie Brennan called me in distress to tell me that she'd been sexually assaulted by one of my male colleagues in a gubernatorial campaign that I was a senior advisor on. She begged me for help, but I could not help her. I could not tell her that her allegations did not surprise me because I'd warned her boss, a powerful politician, that he was presiding over an organization rife with misconduct. I could not tell her that I had warned him something like this would happen if he did not get the men on his campaign under control. I could not tell her that I feared she would face retaliation for coming forward while her alleged assailant would be protected, because that is exactly what happened to other women who had spoken up about misconduct in that organization. I could not tell her any of this because I was bound to a stringent NDA that prevented me from sharing anything I'd witnessed that could help her make sense of the horror she was experiencing, or that would help her get even a modicum of justice. I could not tell her this because my boss's attorneys were sending me letter after threatening letter reminding me about the existence of my NDA. They insisted on binding me to this NDA even if it meant, and especially if it meant, helping this young, scared woman in her moment of deep pain. Today, thanks to the Speak Out Act and to all of you, no one else will ever have to agonize over whether helping a survivor means having to worry about being sued into oblivion. This legislation is for survivors and witnesses who only want to own their own truths. It will make the American workplace safer, more equitable, and more just. And it demonstrates that meaningful change is always possible if you only commit to making it happen. Thank you from the bottom of my heart to all of you, and on behalf of women everywhere, thank you so much for making the Speak Out Act a reality.
And one of our great advocates for women.
Good afternoon, and thank you to our fellow esteemed congresswomen and men and advocates. It is always a good day when the voices of survivors of sexual assault are protected, that when choice is protected, that when truth is protected. We know that when survivors of sexual violence are silenced, we know that's a form of violence. We know that that is re-traumatizing survivors. And so what this piece of legislation does is that it creates a pathway to healing and justice. It will give power back to survivors in order for them to do what they want to do, and whether that's tell their story or otherwise. And so it is always, always important to remember that there is not a walk of life that sexual violence does not impact. And we are so clear that survivors are the GPS in which we will always take our direction from. And so we are so thankful for this piece of legislation. It is a North Star for how we need to continue our work. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone any questions? Otherwise, we're going to go celebrate. How you doing?
Well, we Lift Our Voices very strongly believe that it should just be women who are protected from sexual harassment and assault. We should protect people of color from racial discrimination. We should protect others from gender discrimination. We should protect the LGBTQ plus community, the elderly from age discrimination. Everything that is subject to Title VII, everything that is subject to discrimination and retaliation should not be bound by secrecy. And that's where we stand, and that's what we're going to push. We will get as much done as we possibly can in the next Congress and at the state level, which we've been doing as well, but we will not rest until everybody has this access to their own story and the ability to tell their own story.
And I would just add that we are very instrumental at the state level as well. So this is what we could get done on the federal level, which is monumental. But at the state level, New Jersey, California, Washington State have all passed bans on NDAs for all toxic workplace issues. And we're seeing a domino effect happen as a result of that. You have companies like Microsoft, Apple, and Google who globally then decided to take out NDAs because how do they favor certain state employees differently than others from around the world, which is what we were hoping was going to happen. But in January, as an organization, Lift Our Voices, we will be introducing the same kind of NDA ban legislation in the state of New York. And we're very optimistic that that will pass. And then when you have New York, New Jersey, California, and Washington State, a huge swath of employees in those states, but also businesses. And we're hoping that same domino effect will happen where all businesses will do the right thing and be a good corporate citizen and take out NDAs for all of their employees. And then we'll work federally on forced arbitration, too, on these other areas.
Let me add that last year, the House passed a bill to ban forced arbitration of all types. We weren't able to get that through, so we concentrated on the narrower bill to end forced arbitration on in sexual assaults. But it is my hope that we will be able to get a bill passed eventually on banning on the federal level all forced arbitrations and all NDAs.